Good morning, welcome to Morning Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Tuesday, the 12th of September. So, looking at the euro dollar first, and we're getting to a point of, well, we're still in a solid upward trend from a daily perspective. There is some divergence sitting around these most recent highs. We put a pivot swing in, which is a bearish signal. Now, there are a couple of trend lines. I've put it on the bigger trend line that's running up here, but there is quite a little bit of a steeper trend line, which we're just on the verge. If you're putting a trend line across these lows from the 17th across to around about the 31st, and you'll find that we're pretty close to running through that trend line. So there's a potential slight change in direction here. So I'm watching it carefully. This morning, though, we're just currently running back towards the daily pivot. I'll just show you on the AUDUSD. There we go. So it's a case of just checking how this market runs this morning. If it reacts off this level, maybe through to the 34, which is sloping downwards nicely. If it reacts off those points, I may be looking to start putting in a bit of a short position. I do wonder with the current situation, and we seem to have a bit more. It seems to have been gone marginally quieter in terms of the situation in North Korea. Maybe we'll get a bit more of a correction on the euro. Maybe coming down towards the 34 and 50. I'm looking at there initially, but let's just see how things go. We haven't had a decent correction for a while, so let's see. Okay, so that's the euro dollar. Let's have a look at the pound. Pound overnight, I say overnight, but it was a late vote, and the government won their vote, so they managed to succeed in getting through with the withdrawal bill, basically, to move on to the next stage, which is getting all European law signed over into UK law before they then, in 2 years' time or whenever it is, it's a bit less now, can then remove parts of it that you don't like. Okay, so here we are. Pound rallied on that basis. From a daily perspective, it's still, I mean, it's just over the sort of regression average here at the moment, and still looking reasonably solid. It's running to its monthly R1 there. Looking at it from this picture here, and there was some weakness showing yesterday. It put a little lower high in initially on the chart here. It's currently sitting there looking, chasing after. It's just chased through the daily pivot there. Now, at the moment, it's still erring on the bullish side, and it's a currency that could be quite odd to trade this week. We've got inflation data out at 9:30, where the expectation is it's going to be closer to 3%, 2.8, I think is the forecast. We could, of course, on that note, I think there's a risk at 9:30 particularly. So anyone trying to short this market, even though there are some signs of weakness, may get chopped out on that basis, and post news may be easier to trade on the pound and see where it goes. I mean, if the inflation's high, there's a chance that it puts more pressure on interest rate increases, although I think that's very unlikely. But the voting may change, which again changes people's opinion. It has been sold off in the past and never made the same sort of recovery of the euro, and well, we may see a bit more of a recovery. Dollar yen. Dollar yen softened yesterday. Real solid day upwards there. Put a pivot swing on the bullish side. It's marginally triggered that sort of move, and we could see a continuation to the upside. There's little really stopping at the moment, and again, this is affected by the North Korean situation as risk is back on and people are taking risk again, in other words. So this sees this pushing up here, looking at the shorter time frames, and well, there was a divergence into the early session there, which could see us retrace back to the daily pivot. It's it's been a lot last the sort of 3 or 4 hours in between, 4 hours in between the sort of move and the push back up now would suggest it consolidated, it's trying to consolidate its way out of the divergence as opposed to having a bigger correction at the moment. So there is a risk, I think, to trying to sell this at the moment. It didn't roll over yesterday. It looked like it was going to earlier on. Just didn't roll very far yesterday, I should say. It just came back towards its weekly pivot and stayed bullish, and well, it's erring that way at the moment. Okay, let's see. Let's have a look at the Aussie dollar. Aussie dollar, again, another pivot swing. It's triggered through the Asian session. So we're getting a lot of this sort of same price action through the markets, which is good if we've got correlation. I like correlation. We retested the 8, just coming back at the moment towards its just gone through now. The daily pivot is coming towards it earlier on. Again, this is one we just watch. The Aussie had been running mildly stronger than some of the markets and just remaining flatter rather than actually being massively bullish, but be interested to see how it runs today and as we run through the morning. Already hit the S1, the daily pivot. You see the range yesterday was very, very tight, which makes the pivots themselves for today very tight, and well, they could we could see the R2 S2s being hit, I guess. At the moment, though, up back to the underside of the weekly pivot, it may push on towards that 50. Again, you'll see. It'll be interesting to see how it reacts. It sort of air kissed it before, actually it's hit it properly earlier on, so it wouldn't be the first test of it, but maybe the first test on a dip in 50, which may have a bit more power. Okay, and finally, he says, let's go and have a look at the Canadian dollar. Canadian dollar still holding on now. As I said yesterday, and I said it, and there's a weekly outlook I've recorded if you don't want to watch that. But the Canadian dollar, the fundamentals behind the Canadian dollar remain strong, and we could see a continuation to this downside. It's looking, I mean, it's rolling slowly on this 4-hourly. It looks like it's rolling over and may run towards yesterday's lows. Let me just bring this into a bit more detail. There we go, so we can see a bit clearer. It missed the daily pivot so far, but again, as I say, selling off at the moment, so some Canadian strength coming through there against the US dollar, so maybe pushing down. It's already broken actually yesterday's lows there, and it does look, as I say, more on the weaker side. So difficult one in some respects to trade, maybe because it is in that sort of the territory of new lows again, and but may find a target down towards the S3. I mean, the targets, the problem is they disappear, and generally if we're trading back to moving averages or key levels, but we're trading into an area which is normally with pivot wise S3 doesn't get hit that frequently, so you're aiming to sort of towards the aim unknown, but the trend is strong in that direction. Okay, news-wise today then, we've just got to now, we've just got the CPI, that's key, or inflation data. It comes out at 9:30. I say CPI, but that's the headline figure. Behind that is the PPI and the RPI. And the RPI is just as important for a lot of people. The underlying inflation that's been our old-fashioned measure for many years. That's looking more for people towards 3.7%. So inflation is running high, and if it continues running high, it's mixed message really there. Okay, then there's later on 3 p.m. JOLTS job opening in the US, very low value number in terms of what we normally see there. So that's it for me. Have a great day. Bye for now.